My name is jamespfp. This is the Banjocast. I do believe it's the Banjocast now. Let's see if it starts up. I think it should. Waiting to hear back on the other side. Look, looking good. Live chat's enabled. My plan for this evening, fairly straightforward. Last video I showed off that I managed to get a working miles per hour counter while doing something while tracking motion. It presented a discrete problem to me, because Blender, for all of its charms, doesn't like doing things at different moments in time at the same time. For example, if I'm doing something at frame 1 in the animation, or in an animation, this one is frame 1 here, currently loaded. Frame 1 for an animation is not thought of specifically as frame 1, it's thought of as current frame. There's a start frame and end frame, and then the frame you're currently on. And you can advance frames, jump to a specific frame number, but it's not easy to access data, or at least I haven't learned yet how to access data on some other frame in the past without having to explicitly, there has to be some kind of explicit way of calling that data in current memory. Well, the easy way I figured out how to do that was by using the same sets of curves twice. I'm going to illustrate how it's done. I think I'm also going to illustrate in the space of the next couple hours how to have more than one of them running at once, like how to track different objects by repeating the method but using the same script. Because this is a medium, like an intermediate to advanced Blender tutorial. I say that as a person who doesn't think of himself as advanced at all, only in the sense that I've had enough time where I might be able to show somebody else how to also do the same thing, and I'd like to do that. And in the meantime, in the next couple hours, I haven't got much planned to listen to. I might put on the Cult of Nick if I get a little tired of explaining what I'm doing. I started ahead of time, but not by much. Started ahead of time just to give myself something interesting to look at while doing this stream. So I modeled quickly and not to any scale or proportion or design a helicopter object. Not going to animate it. I only want things that it can be clearly identified if I happen to be in perspective, or if I happen to be in a top-down view. So that's why I've done it that way. And this is the controller object for the helicopter. As you can see, it doesn't get the rotation right now for the tail rotor, so I have to make sure that I've got that locked on to this position properly. It needs to follow all rotations too. So where's this rotor? And the way that I'm doing this is the same as any other way. This is Z rotation, unless I missed my guess. Oh, I want it offset to there, but then I want it also to be following this in terms of rotate. I want it to be swinging locked onto this location. Copy rotation on this one's going to be trickier. Off of target, some object. Currently copies this location. I don't want that one. I don't want that one for sure. I don't think I want X rotation. Maybe I'm wrong. This should only rotate right now in Z. Well, yeah, see what happened? Ooh, if I rotate in Z again, the blade's following in the tail rotor, but it's not following my actual rotation through Z. I might just scrap this tail rotor altogether because it's not necessary for the purposes of instruction. So yeah, top blade doesn't need to follow this rotation. It only needs to follow the location. So that's all I've done for it. Nice and simple. I've got a background image added to the scene, which I scammed from, well, which I took off of OpenStreetMap. It's a local map, and it happens to show with about this distance equaling 120 meters. I've got it scaled. Got it scaled to one unit is one blender unit is 1 meter, and therefore the bar that I'm there maneuvering around is 120 meters in length. So this is 120 meters past the curve here, past the turn. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay down a series of animation. Well, I'm going to lay down a series of points calculated at, say, points in time to keyframe the helicopter, and perhaps I'll put something on the road too, driving at different speeds. So like I don't necessarily want to model a real life car chase or anything like that. No, I'm merely going to be using a couple of dummy objects in order to basically like lay out how it was I got the speedometer working. So the helicopter object's already done. I'm going to explicitly show you how I've set up this kind of rigging. We don't need anything as complicated as that helicopter to really show this. What I've been using on live stream so far, as I've been doing work with Charlottesville videos, is simply plain axes for controller objects. So this item is now called an empty. We're going to call it controller car. So capitalized is not really necessary, and then dot car, so that it's an easy way to remember what object this is and to call it up if I say needed it in a script, and I might. Got controller some object over here. I didn't follow the name scheme by not capitalizing it, but I could. I could also make it easier to type out by simply putting down cont, C-O-N-T, some object. So let's do that on this one too. Follow the name scheme. Cont car. And cont car's control is scalable. So right now it's a meter in every direction at scale 1. So if I make the scale of Y 2, it's now 2 meters in both directions, therefore 4 meters long. So if I make that 2.5, it's as long as a car generally is. And if I make it 3, it's a little bit longer than a car would generally be. And since this is too wide, it's a little bit wider than a car. Well, it's about as wide as a car generally is, maybe a little bit wider. But if I make the X value 1.5, then it'll be a little bit larger than the dimensions of any given vehicle at real world scale. And now I'm going to add an object for the car. I'll go mesh, plane, calls this plane 0. The reason being this is plane number 1, some object, or top blades might have been, or some other objects. Actually, I would think the ruler is probably plane right now. This is going to be called the car. The car. Da car. Alright? And similarly to this object, the controller object, we have explicit controls either for scale or dimensions. I'm going to use the dimension scale, it's a little bit better. The Y scale is going to be 5 meters. The X scale 1.8, or the X dimension, sorry. So side to side dimensions, top to bottom dimensions. There is no Z dimension. I could make the car be in more than 2D space, but for these purposes it doesn't need to be. So we'll use 2D only. And this is a shaded object. It's a shaded plane. Currently the car is about as big as what the helicopter is, you can notice. So the helicopter is probably a little small for a helicopter. this object needs a constraint. So we go to constraint and copy location. And I'm going to use this little eyedropper to select the empty object controller car. And it gets it in here. I only need to follow the X and Y coordinates. I don't need Z. And there doesn't need to be an offset. There doesn't, because it's currently centered right on the object where I will want it to be. So right now if I grab this, the car follows. But I also want it to, so we're going to call this lock car controller. I'm going to add another one to copy rotation, same manner, using the eyedropper to get the right controller. I only need it to follow Z rotation to get it to turn. And for the purposes of this, the controller doesn't ever need to rotate on X or Y. So I'll lock those down now. I want its location free. Maybe I don't want it to go up in the air or anything. If it's a top-down map, I could lock X location and not worry about it. Similarly with this one, although if I lock everything on it right now, it won't matter. The controller still controls it. What I've locked down by doing that is its ability to move off the controller, and that's only when the controller doesn't have explicit control. If I go offset and try to grab it, it won't move right now, but if I offset now, it will. And you see there's a little line connecting it to say this is being controlled from this central location. But this one, I don't need to worry about these three, and I'm going to go to track 2 and that one, which is exactly what I did with the Charlottesville map so far. So here's a car in the Charlottesville pattern. Maybe I want the car to be a little more obviously front and back. Like there's a front and a back to the car. Well, I could select the control points here and grab them, and on the Y, roll the control points back. Make it look like it's farther forward or back. Right now though, grab Y, maybe just a little farther forward so that there's an obvious forward on it and a not so obvious back on it. The back is in line, but the forward is, the normal direction is indicated by these 3 points. So there's an arrow kind of suggested. So that's a simple controller. Now since I know I'm going to want a text readout for both this object and this object, I might as well create both right now while I'm at it. I only need to make it once. Shift A, we go text. If I hit, okay, I'm currently in shaded mode. If I hit Tab, I can get into an edit text mode. We see here the text field is currently filled with the word text, just 4 letters. And to the Blender text object, this is in a property space called body. The text body is a simple string and only a string. It doesn't care what the string is. It could be numbers, letters, spaces, characters, anything. But that's all that it cares about. It considers this a string value and no other. So even if this is a number, let's say this is 555. If I pass this text body object in computer science terms, if I pass that data value to some other, calculate to some other thing in a program, say, hey, divide this by 5, it's not going to return 111 because this is a string, a text string, not a actual number. It doesn't know how to differentiate that. All it knows is that the string required is currently 555 in ASCII characters. Which is the entire reason why this tutorial needed to be created. Because this text body thing doesn't have an easily accessed nor updated variable space in Blender itself. You need to use Python to get at it. But that's okay. Python's fun. Python works. Text we're going to call speedometer, and since it's currently at the car, we'll call it car. Speedometer.car. Could even call it speedom, or we could call it V meter. Maybe V meter would be better. Hey, it's nice and fast. Capital V meter dot car. Now I'm going to have some fun before we get any further. Now that this text object's been created, I'm going to go to this properties panel. It's called the properties interface. Click on this one as object, the little cube icon. See that VMeter car is currently selected. That is the text object itself. There's a series of different controls for this text object, but right now its control point, well, I should probably show you this. One is a curve object, or it's under the curves panel for a regular curve. Text isn't rendered as a bitmap, it's rendered as a vector object. So these curves are created from the font file. No matter how much they zoom in on them, they never get pixelated. They'll always stay sharp, which is why they're special and thus on the curve panel. And here under the paragraph alignment, I can actually change the offset from that center point specifically, which is very useful for things like speedometers, because I might want to make a measurement from the location here at the center point of the car or close to it. And not from the place where the text is actually being kept, so to speak. For now, I'm going to keep the offset to 0. And maybe I'll make this negative 0.5. That's too much. So increase it a little. I'll put it on the halfway mark, so it's half above, half below. The 0.3 looks really good. And also, to be quite well, doesn't really matter which part I measure from. If I measure from the car's front axle, rear axle, or the wheels, the wheelbase, or from the center of gravity, or the front of the car, or what, each measurement will be made from the same position in space, which is going to be coming off the controller, not actually from the car object. So on the other object panel, the cube one, we don't want any groups, don't worry about any of the display stuff, none of the relations, none of the transform stuff. Custom properties is what concerns me now. We need to add 5 custom properties. 2, 3, 4, 5. Each of them right now is given a unique name, prop 1 through 4, and prop. I'm going to start renaming these because I know that I want them to be named differently. Property number 1. We're going to call this loc, L-O-C underscore X. Property value is going to be 0.00. I'm entering that in that form to let Blender know I expect to have a decimal number there in the future. The minimum value might be -500. Maximum value, hey, it could be positive 500. I don't know, but it's going to be some value in this range of about 1,000. I'm thinking, all said and done, there can't be much more than 1,000 block or 1,000 Blender units from one side of the map to the other. Maybe there is a little more than that, but 5, well, let's see. That's 100, that's 200, 300, 400, 500. So it's just short of 500 left to right, I think. Maybe a little bit more than, but only here and here. So I could be a little more precise since I know the map is, pretty big. Let's say -750 and 750. Use soft limits, not important. Tooltip, you can give it a hover over tooltip to remind myself probably what it's about, but right now it doesn't need one. Locx. Going to do another one similar to it called loc_y, all capital. Again, 0.00 for the first value. Minimum 750. Well, it's probably not as much up and down as what left and right is, but we'll give it the same values for now. We'll assume that the area being mapped is more or less square, but it actually isn't. It's much closer to what? 1, 2, 3, 400 above and below. So maybe I will be precise about it. Let's call it -5 and +5. 100. The next property is going to be called I'm going to use delta x. And then I'm going to call it, well, it's going to be delta x. Simply delta x. Property value 0.00. It's going to also be a decimal number. Its minimum might be negative, but I doubt it'll ever be more than -10. And its minimum, well, it could be quite large, but it's a car, so it might never be larger than 50. So let's say 100. So now delta x pops into the list only alphabetically. It doesn't matter where these things are. They'll all be tracking different variables. And currently, I'm defining the variable. Next one is going to be delta y, again with an underscore. Property value 0.00. -10 is good. 100 will be fine. And OK. So now delta x, delta y, loc x, loc y, and prop 4 we're going to call vcalc. Vcalc will also be a decimal with a decimal number with some number of after, and there is quite a lot of precision available here. So vcalc should always be a positive number. It might be as low as -1. I doubt it. Be safe and do the same as we did the last one. It should never really be a negative number. Could be quite high. vcalc might be really, really high. So what number should I put on it? Yeah, I'm going to use this in meters per second to keep it smaller. Otherwise the value is going to be in the thousands. It's going to be like tens of thousands. Could the value be higher than 50 kilometers an hour? Well, then that's 50,000 if it's meters that I'm measuring, right? I could convert it away from meters. I don't know. Let's think it's going to be meters per second. It's going to be meters per second being measured. So then if there's some other conversion being done to it, I can either do it in the script or I can do it here. Oh, let me think. I gotta find my calculator for a second. If I'm using meters per second, let's say a vehicle is moving at 20 meters per second for 60 seconds, and then for an hour. That's 72,000 as a value for the speed of 72 kilometers an hour. So it's quite a big ramp up, right? And meters per minute is generally not used. It would be very low if I did meters and then did another calculation. Like I could ramp the value up as a multiplier. But generally I would have to. So I'm going to figure for meters per second in vcalc. And I'm going to write that down explicitly in the tooltip. Meters per second for a helicopter could be quite high. So I'm still going to say it's going to higher than 250. Man, it might even be as high as 500. So I'm putting meters per second in the tooltip for this one. The only one with a tooltip so far. So if I hover over it, meters per second pops up in the little thing to remind me what it actually is. Don't need to know about delta V, locx. These kind of explain themselves. Now that this object's been, this V meter car has been named and given all of these positions for data to get handed off to it, I could go right ahead and duplicate it. And the duplicate that I make will be called vMeterCar 0.001, and it'll have all these same things applied to it. That's very nice. This one's going to be vMeter Heli. vMeter Heli is going to do much the same as these other things are doing and follow the location of that. It's going to be constrained to this location. And then I'll offset the text. So if I get this one, add object constraint, copy location, doesn't need to copy rotation, just location for the helicopter's controller. I could offset it, but if I offset it, the location I get is not going to be correct. Doesn't much matter actually. I could offset it. You see it pops over already because it's been offset once before. If I clear this offset and I clear this offset, it goes back to the center again. But I want it to go on the Y somewhere in advance of the helicopter. And it still won't matter if it's in the center or not. I'll show you why. So this one is now being controlled explicitly in location by this object. So if I grab it, it moves with. If I rotate it, it won't move with. But if I rotate it and grab it, it still maintains its position wherever it was and with respect to where it's been anchored, essentially. This one, I'm going to do the same thing. Object constraint, copy location, get this from there. Doesn't need a Z location. Can be offset. Prove my point, I'm going to put it manually down here on the car body. Maybe down here would be better, so if the car rotates on the road, it'll still be overlaid on the car. Now if I want that to rotate, grab. If I wanted that to rotate with the car, I could put it right on the car and have it rotate. By adding a second constraint, copy rotation. Also following the car controller, or following the car, either one, and only on Z. Ooh. Will it go the right way if I do this? Oh. No, it won't. Local space to local space. Local space to world space. Maybe I got it the wrong way around again. World space to local space. Huh. I want that to be on there and following that line, man. This must be doable. Not seeing a lot of action in the live chat tonight, but like, geez, he's not doing anything. Yeah, I'm not talking about you know what either. Not right away. Although, maybe I can be, you know, trolled into talking about it. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Okay. Maybe I shouldn't copy the rotation of the controller, but maybe I should copy the orientation of the car more. Let's turn that off. Copy location is good. Add object constraint. Copy rotation, not of the controller, but of the car. Local space to world space. No. World space to local space. No. Local to local. Gotta pick one. That one's the right one, but I want it to maintain to here. Just using this point to do it. Huh. It's the darndest thing. Well, it's a good thing I don't plan on making these rotate much anyhow. And either way, I can still get it to copy location and offset. And be updated without having to do. So, for example, I could put it at the back of the car or to the rear of the car. I could even not have it linked to the car directly. It doesn't have to follow the location specifically to get the data that it needs. This is the beauty of it. Seeing as I've lost a few moments there, like lollygagging. So here's these two differently named V meters, one for car, one for helo. And I'm not going to worry about getting any of the things working on either of these two for the next little while. All I got to do is to get some animation laid down for both of these objects, and this doesn't need to be any like in-depth animations. Again, like as I said earlier, it's not following any known events. It's not. I'm not tracking any footage or anything of that kind. All I'm doing is using the map here, which I know is a real-world like a real-world area that I'm sort of familiar with. That I can take a guess. Well, it takes this car this long to get this far, and then you can turn there and there and there and or whatever. So we'll think about a bit of a route. That's Pete I got there. That's not a great one. And get in around the back there. That might be alright. I might have a car. Maybe that'd be cool. Have a car come all the way from over here, hit the road, and then fly up. And then have the chopper circle around on him or something and chase afterward. So that there's a large number of curves like to be considered. Or there's a variety of speeds, I should say. So here we go, we're going to lay down the car in space. Let's say he's in the parking area first when he leaves. At frame number 1. And gosh, that seems awful small when it's at that scale. Like just big enough to drive through. And I might as well like saving some of the suspense by implying that he's going to go that far before turning onto the road and starting. So you input a loc rote. Three seconds for him to get that far. Loc rote. Three seconds for him to get that far. Insert loc rote. And again, not too worried about what the curves are demanding for anything here, although this isn't terrible. And now, how many seconds say to get down around the curve here? Because that's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 45 meters or so. "15-second gap, he's going to go that far. Insert loc rote. And I'm not being terribly precise here because it doesn't much matter. I'm getting a raw idea of distances and times. That's it. And halfway through that 15-second period, seven, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Insert loc rote. Three, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for 3.5. And changing the rotation. Insert loc rote. And now 1, 2, 3, 10.5 looks pretty good. So, next one. It should be 15 seconds later. I'm going to give them acceleration for this 15 seconds. That's, what is it again? That's, oh yeah, 10 meters, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. He's going to do 100 meters in 15 seconds. Let's say he does 150 in 15 seconds. So he's going to be up 10 meters a second. Whoop. By about that time. So I already know kind of what the speeds are because I'm picking them. But I'm not necessarily being terribly precise about them. Like I could change them later at some other point. I could pick there as opposed to the last spot, for example, would be nice because then I could choose this location at a specific point in time, thus changing the speed. So really the locations at specific points in time are all that matters. And that means I could do this with a curve, I think. Since the curve will map out all possible locations on a given route. And then all I need to do is to keyframe times for a specific, time for this object to be there and a time for the other object to be there. Just change the keyframes for time for evaluation, essentially. Evaluation time for a given curve. Still think this will work out better. So where was that last one? There, yeah, I'm gonna move that forward. I don't want to know so much what the speed's like. Let's say by this time he's probably going to want to be turning. So I'll go back prior to the turn being done, insert rote there instead. Let's say he's going to do this in 7 seconds max. 7 times 30. Oh, grab. Will be rotated by that. Insert rote. Go back to the last one and we'll let it play through. See that I want to be establishing the turn by that second. By the time the second's over, I'll already be turned. Is the positioning good? Probably not. Probably I could go back a bit right there. Insert rote. And now I'm going to give him 4 seconds to here. I'll go 5 just to be half consistent. I'd rather he didn't get there too quickly, like impossibly quickly. Insert rote. I think the rotation is probably going to be updated a tiny bit by then. Assuming he's going to come to a complete stop there, yeah, not really. I was actually trying to decide, do I make him cut down this road? This is the Avalon Mall. This is the mall parking lot. This is all a bunch of parking lots. The idea that he's going around this fast, that's why there'd be a helicopter involved. So there's a bit of room for error around here, is what I mean to say. This could be at night. This isn't buildings. This is parking lot. McDonald's here. Oh, we could throw. Never mind. Plus 10 seconds is plus 300 frames. I want the car to be right about there. Let's go back one. By that turn, we're probably going to be turning it like this, and even overcorrecting a little. Grab X. Insert rote. One idea of a wide turn there, and then correction afterwards. Insert rote. Satellites here, but not here. He's going to drift right through this regardless what traffic's doing. So the next measure is going to be 5 seconds flat. That's 2 seconds. 3, 4, 5. And he's going to want to start turning when he gets to about there, yeah. I'm going to start doing my turns in advance. It's probably too slow to get there. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. He's going to be all the way around the corner and in the outside lane. Heading west. Double lane, both sides with a turning lane in the middle in this one. Cert, lope, rote, back. 1 second. He's going to be oversteering. Cert, lope, rote. Cert, lope, rote. Where's the next one? Yeah, I'm going to move this one forward. Up the road more. Can I get that in? Can I get that in 2 moves? And whatever that speed is, I'm going to continue on for a while. Ooh. Where's the next main set of lights? Pete Street. There, yep. How long do you think it's going to take him to go up there if he's rat racing? I'm going to give him about 10 seconds flat. Main road like that. Maybe a little longer. Oh, control. So, plus 13 times 30. Let's have him weaving in and out of traffic. Just to see how fast this looks. I think I've already got him booking pretty fast and through a parking lot, let alone when he gets on the highway. When he gets on the road. Don't even know if there's too many cars can go that fast, accelerate that fast, I mean. Gonna get him here in about 4 seconds, 5 seconds again. Maybe a little longer. Sounds like the rain has started out there. We're in the middle of a bunch of really crappy days, weather-wise. Seasonally. Yeah, the season of the mist. Three seconds, he's going to be around the corner and headed that way. Set low route. Gonna have him flip around and go back down the road too. So I'm gonna get him up here in about 4 seconds, 3 seconds. Insert load road and over to the next one. Gonna let him lose a bit of speed to the next one. To here and another rotation. Insert load road. Let's go back to these two now and get them keyframed right. 1, 2, 3 for the second before he makes that turn. Before he starts making the turn. Insert load road. Actually grab on the Y first. Let's move him closer to the corner before he makes the turn. Insert load road. Yeah, that looks better. So you accelerate, then slow down. And when he gets to this one, same thing. 1, 2, 3. To roll him around that way. Insert load road. So now when he leaves this turn, okay, 10, 20, 30. Yeah, you should already be on the new vector. Insert load road. One, two, three. Rotation will be clear. He'll be around the corner. Insert load road. Next location right back to where that is. 100 meters. How long does it take him to do 100 meters? Ooh, no 9 seconds. I'm counting blocks here now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. That's 400 meters there. Thinking how long of an animation I need here. It doesn't need to be too long. Right now it's driving quite a distance. Let's get it. Really doesn't matter what these number values are. I could start picking a few like this and getting farther ahead in time. Like I know the next value is going to be grab. Maybe not that far back in time. Let's say 20 seconds, maybe he'll be up that far. No. Let's say 11 or 12. 15 should get him all that way back there. Rolling around and grabbing on the Y to get it down lower. Insert load rote. And in 15, I'm going to get it right to the end of the road there. We'll let it end there. So in this one, plus 450. I'm going to grab the car, bring it all the way to there. Now, assuming I had data from anything, assuming I had data from a GPS unit or some kind of video evidence to work from to position the car at specific places and time and space. That's what I'm kind of replicating here by being arbitrary with what places I choose and for what purpose. Five. Grab on the Y, move it down lower, rotate. Insert load rote. 1, 2, 3. By this point, I'm definitely going to want it lower. Grab Y. Rotation looks pretty good though. Insert load rote. wherever the low point is. Now I'm not even going for specific seconds in time. I'm just looking for places where I can make a decent update to position to make sure that the curve of the keyframes themselves are decent. I'm going to maintain a speed right to the end there. I'll do that on the curve. I'll do that on the graph window. You can see now how many frames to the end of the animation. So it's 4381. So I'll put that number over here, 4381. That's the last frame of the animation. I can now hit home, and that's all the keyframes I have to worry about moving one way or the other for the car object. I'll now change from a timeline window to a graph editor. Hit home. You can see that the loc wrote controller for the car. If I go where it's parked up here in the parking lot, isn't it? Oh, right at the beginning. So this object's what's selected. There's no keyframes here, none there, only on this object. And that's all the data that I just mapped out. I need X location, Y location. Don't need to see Z. Don't need to see the Euler rotations for X or Y. Only 3 curves matter for this particular object. That's X and Y location, so we can figure out a distance. And the rotation for niceties of top-down map display. But we can tell from rotation what the direction is, and that gets the rest of the information from the vector object, which was the XY location. Like, there's not just an XY location, there's also direction implied. So the pluses and minuses for the exchanges and the XY location, those are recorded essentially by that rotation object. We could use that for a bunch of different things. We could also use that to, you know, perhaps the rotation of this would guide this in a different way. So maybe it doesn't need to track 2, but maybe it just needs to, well, if this rotation changes, this doesn't rotate to follow it, but that it spins around in space via some other algorithm or some other controller, which, you know, that might be the way of doing it. The more I think about it, the more I know it's probably the way of doing it. These frames currently take place in time at the first, starting from the first frame right to the last frame. And I can skip through them by using up arrow, and it goes each time to one of those key sets, because there's one at every frame for each of the 3 keys. So always loc wrote. And I don't really need to see anything about them, other than there's a few places where I'd like to be able to perhaps change a property or 2 about the curve. For example, here I think I'd like to have a vector handle for the last speed, which I could then rotate. Oop, I'll grab this side. I'm going to grab that one. I don't want it to slow down too much as it goes to the end there. I want it to be the feeling of the car casually accelerating away. So really the only keyframe I want to change. So now that none of them are selected, that's great. We can still see all of them, but none of them are selected. Here comes the fun part. This cont car object. I want to get this, I don't need to do it right away, but sooner or later I'm going to want to take a copy of this. Once I'm happy with the way these curves work. I don't want to necessarily track the car through the entire animation to verify this, but I guess I should. Make sure at least that there isn't anything that looks terribly wrong about it, because once these curves are laid down, I have to physically copy the entire object or the curves and place them on some other, or, you know, that's why I say copy them. If I copy the object and put the curves on another object, and then offset the curves in time to get the same data, Because that's what I want, is I want this data repeated, but at a later point in time. And I don't want anything controlled by the data other than, like I say, this ghost controller. So you can see there that there's at least one place where there's a implied drift that's quite high there. So I'll fix that before I do anything else. Insert float rote. Insert float rote. I can see how this one's going to look nicer if I go back 10 frames first and then 10 frames again. Set another rotation there. Insert float rote. I want a sense of a wide turn there. Yeah, that's good. I used a shoplifter from the mall. I don't know. Maybe they flipped somebody at McDonald's to bird. Not entirely sure. Here goes the large cruise section. Now, since this scale of the map isn't entirely precise, but it's close, a meter for meter implied by this, and this car is going quite quick, covering 100 meters every couple seconds. And what a slowdown he made there. I guess when I was a courier, I did see days that were driven much like this. No standing car 5. Then it's off to the races. Wow. Yeah, that's great. That motion's awesome. I don't know how fast it actually is. I made a few guesses. I made some different... I wanted a bunch of different slopes. Mostly not on the rotation, but only on these two. I wanted some interesting and different slopes to have different speeds represented. So this should be a higher speed than that last speed. And both of them higher than that speed or that one. And this speed looks to be about the same as that. The rest of them are just gradually getting higher until finally, bang, it goes really big. Not much north-south direction speed, just is largely being measured on the X variable at this moment in time. So, there's that guy. How about we do the helicopter too, but we do the helicopter a little differently. The helicopter's got a bit of flexibility to it, in the sense that I've allowed that the helicopter's XYZ location is more important than its XY location. And therefore, its controller here, it's exactly the same as the other one, but it's not a simple axis. It's like a tube to indicate it's got some 3D aspect to it. And if I go on the side view, you can see background images, all views, no, only top. If I go on the side view here, you can see that's the way I've modeled it. Like it's only 1, 2, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 for the passenger cabin and cockpit. Another 3 or 4 for the tail. That seems about right. And this controller object is about 5 or 6 across. So where's the helicopter going to start? I want to get the most out of the map space and distances, directions. Let's say chopper starts here. It's going to be airborne, it's going to be moving. I'm going to spin it around here. So there's the first position, 1. Cert loc rote. And now the second position, I'm going to get 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds later. And it's going to be that there 3 seconds later and heading in that direction. So it'll update its rotation a slight bit and then insert loc rote. Go back to the graph view. Want to see that last transition. Don't want to see these values again. These are useless values, but these I do. And we can see mostly X, Y location speed's not an issue here. It's the it's X. I should say it's not X location that's the big issue here. It's the Y location. Either way, I'm going to extrapolate them both in a linear fashion. I want the motion as established by this point and that previous point to be continued. So however fast it's going is going to continue in that speed and direction for some distance. And then when I'm happy with whatever that is, I'm going to rotate it a little bit, insert a location rotation keyframe, turning constant extrapolation back on, and now plot some other move. So what we get here now is a constant, well, it should be looking more like a constant speed from the beginning. Might have to change this one to get the speed to be a little more constant. And also this one, this handle doesn't need to be that big. 0.1 scale on that would be better. Similarly here, scale 0.2 instead of 0.1. Want it to slow down as it moves to an alteration in course, but not much. Back to timeline. So there's the first one, there's the second one. Third one, helicopter wear. Cert loc rote. Fourth one, helicopter wear. Cert loc rote. So we just see now I'm not bound by the same rules as with the car. I can go anywhere on the map. I can get any speed I want to pretty much from the helicopter. But I have to choose distant points in time with a short distance to get really slow motion like this. Or I choose distant points with a short period of time to get really fast motion. So when he makes that turn, we're going to call that pursuit. Chopper's going to be here. Chopper's going to be coming this way, kind of thing. I don't know if I've ever seen a helicopter used in a car chase here, ever. Dirt road. See how fast that looks. Takes him a second to go from 0 back up to some other speed, and he's got to rotate around and reset his collective and his cyclic, and it takes a while. But he can do this, though. He can drift ahead of time on his expected curve. I'm going to insert just a rotation key for this one. This is merely a matter of taste. Actually, lope rope would have been better there, I think. The idea is I'm trying to get this chopper to go up that way and then flip around. As if he's half pursuing, half hovering at distance to kind of watch what he's doing. My rationale being, if he gets to somewhere like that, coming close to him as he's hovering, he's going to want to move to be able to look underneath him again. So he's going to move over here and roll around to see. Yeah, by then he's going to be back here and turning for pursuit. And at here, he really turns it on. So I'm going to have the chopper catch up to him almost by about there, and then pull away. See how this looks from here. You can see the car on the road there, a little dot. You can see the chopper flying around, gliding around. Last position. He's going for a long ass run down this road in that high speed. Going to get the chopper to here first so I can get faster speeds. Maybe that far. Insert load road. And then by this moment, by that like toward the end, back a couple frames, I'm going to move the chopper over to the other side of the road, rotate him all the way around, insert a load rote, and then halfway between this little across the road run with a flip around, I'm going to move his location to indicate he's not barricading, but acting kind of like a blockade. He's boxing him in a little. Save that. Let's full screen it. Let's turn the map down a lot so it's not too overpowering. And let's select that controller and that controller so we can see them both. Go to the beginning. Both in the top part of the map. One of them I don't want to change much. That's the helicopter. The helicopter is going to be the simplest here because it's got so little values to change compared to the car. Car's motion to be correct needs to be tweaked out. Here he comes toward the car. I could zoom in here and get a better look. I really like the way that can overtake. and still give a sense of like high speed or being able to change velocity quickly as a helicopter can. Not only a helicopter, but pretty much only a helicopter. It's pretty neat how it goes from quadrant to quadrant on the map. I do dig that. But there's lots of space here, here, and here. Not a hell of a lot happening over that side of the road, so. Car almost goes to a full stop in the middle of the highway. And then after the chopper beats it to the middle, it's going to go for a high-speed run of his own. So there's these two different objects, both with different speeds, and currently both with speedometers attached to them waiting for input. That's the beginning of the tutorial. That's the start. That's where it all begins. And I guess I should make this blend file available for up or download later. That's probably a good idea. I think I could arrange that. And the blend file would have everything inside it that you need to be able to see how it works, like the script that I'll be writing and using. Now, if I get to any more scripting or anything else, I have to take a short break, because this is the Banjocast, and breaking is what I do from time to time. I'm going to put on some of my favorites. Chris Osmond's Blue Moon. A little bit of local flavor with a blues style.
Over the past couple of years, I released a few albums. You know, a little bit of music from each one, and a bit of new material tonight too, as well. Some stuff people never heard before. First, start off with one of my favorites. A little tune by, well, it's an original actually. It's a song called "Working Blues," a song I wrote a few years back. Money working 9 to 5. I do what I can so I can stay alive. But I got my baby, she's just 4 years old. Gotta try and keep her out of the rain and the cold. Well, you see those women who just walk those streets, they're looking for a dime bag and some food to eat. But I've been working here since I was 9. Well, said I keep working till the day I die. Since my mama she died, just yesterday since my daddy he lied. All my brothers and my sisters too, yeah. But I don't want no sympathy from you. Well, just last night I drank my last bottle of gin, and I don't know that you can forgive my sins. The devil's smarter and hell is getting hotter, and I don't know that you can walk on water, yeah. town. Well, that is where our high-class business is done. Now go on home, boy, you better run, run, run. Well, I made my money and I worked my fingers to the bone. Now I saved all my dollars so I could have a home. Well, I've been working here since I was 9 years, and I keep working till the day I die. That's how I work with blues. Thank you guys. God damn. We're gonna try another original now. This song called Blame. When I was young, I had a quick hand and a quick tongue. Life wasn't easy, but I got by. I learned my lessons, not on the first try. funky number for you, a new one I've been writing not too long ago. It's called You Weren't Ready Yet. You hold me close, and then you let me go. You play your games, you can't fool the rolling stone. You look so good, and it felt so right to take what you own, honey. Oh, when you leave tonight, and now you claim you're loving, and you said you care.
S. Chris Osmond's Blue Moon, local blues band of ill repute. No, I shouldn't say that. Decent repute. Name like Osmond, I think he might be from the West Coast. They call that a wild ass guess on my part. With a name like that, it's not a bad name. Don't get me wrong. I'm merely saying. So where were we? I was trying to do a tutorial in a short period of time. It's going to take a couple hours to go through this. But I think it'll be well worth going through. I guess I might have to put up a little bit of an index or a table of contents. Here we go. How do we go between, or how do we get this to start becoming more like I promise, which is a speedometer, a working speedometer? Well, let's do it this way. First of all, in Blender, I'm going to go down to this timeline window and change it to a graph editor. So now I'm looking at the graph editor of everything. Car, the controller for car, and the controller for some object. Oh. Oh, I had them both selected, right. Only want the controller for the car right now. We see that we've got keyframes laid down for all three of these values. If I hit home, I'll see all of them in the window at once. This is the way I've been doing stuff all along. I'll deselect them for now, but I do want to see all three highlighted. This object, the speedometer, I went into my, I didn't go out of my way for it, but I added a whole bunch of properties to it. Here they are. Now I'm going to start getting these properties to respond to what's happening in the scene around them. I'm going to start with LocX, right-clicking it, and choosing Add Driver, manually create later, single. Could do that for LocWire right away too, but it'll be easier and simpler if I do them one at a time first. I'll do the other one all at once, because there's a bit of clicking and assigning here. Shouldn't be too difficult though, because the objects I need are right here in the screen, so it's only a matter of clicking on them quickly. Down here in the graph window, choosing mode drivers. Now locx's driver is visible. If I select it, hit the N key, I get a panel for control. Holding control and middle mouse button to make this bigger so it's nice and visible. If I click on the drivers panel, I can see it's currently set for type scripted expression, which is what I want. Although it's really a scripted expression, this is a straight pass through. I'm going to get a location X variable from here and pass it straight through. And I'm going to get that by, well, I'll call it, doesn't matter what I call it. Well, here's the main thing. What I've labeled it here, it doesn't have to be what I labeled it here. But whatever I label it here needs to go here to get the number there. Here's the real trick. So we're going to call this cur X. Maybe no underscore, just cur and then a capital X. And I'm going to click Object Controller Car. I want its X location and world space. It tells me the value is negative 89.871. That looks good to me. Driver value, therefore, needs to be cur X, and it gets passed forward. Now, if I go through the animation, X value changes, but that's my current location only. Okay, not bad, not bad, not exactly what I need, but that's for the current location only. I can get that value on this number regardless of where it's actually anchored. Even though this value might be the same as this value, it actually isn't. So we can see the location in X and Y for the actual number is much different. But the value it's tracking, it's getting from this real world location or this global location in Blender space. So here we add a driver, manually create. Only want to see locx or loc-y this time. Var is going to be cur y. Cur y. And object controller car. X location changes to Y location. And then this has got a positive 231. So I want this to be cur y. And it passes it forward. So that's those two taken care of. How about the delta? How do I get the deltas? Those are a little trickier. Those took a bit of work for me. Those took a bit of skull sweating. Here's where I have a lot of fun. I'm going to switch this back over to curves mode for a second. And I'm also going to move this over. I want to see the dope sheet, or not the dope sheet. I want to see the outliner view above. This outliner view is very, very useful. Actually, sometimes I wish this was easily made bigger. Doesn't seem to be. View. Anyhow, controller car right now. I'm going to duplicate it, Shift D, and drop it right where it was duplicated. And currently, controller car, if I go down here to the controller car 0.001, I really should rename that to keep this trait, keep this safe. Controller car ghost is what it's going to be called. And what I want is for all of the keyframes for the ghost controller, I want them moved forward in time, some number of frames. And this controller and that controller car that it was copied from, they both have exactly the same keyframes right now. They're at the same space, they're at the same place in space at the same time as one another. There's always a one-for-one correspondence between their keyframes in time. What I'm going to do is to offset time and space by 30 frames. I'm going to use 30 tonight. I'm going to use 30. We'll use 30 first just because I think this is going to be funny out of the way the numbers work out. If we use 30 frames, the numbers get easier again. There's one less division. I'll show you why. I might have to do this with the one that I put on stream last night too. I might change it over to 30. The numbers simply make more sense. Again, there's frame 1, 10, 20, 30. They're both at the same point in space and time here now, but what I really want to have happen is for ghosts at frame 30 to be at keyframe number 1. So what I'm going to do is scale out or zoom out, make sure I select all the keyframes, zoom in. My cursor is currently on 31. I'm going to grab, hit X to limit it to the frames numbers. See how the ghost is moving back in space? I can move it forward in time too. But I want that on 31, which I think it currently is. You see how the 31 display goes yellow in the 3D window? So now frame 1 of animation for this set of curves has been offset. These F curves are unique to the ghost object, even though they've been created as a duplicate from some other object. It's not like an unlinked duplicate. You can make a linked duplicate too, where all the data is the same from one to the other. But in this case, I don't want them too closely linked, because if I shift keyframes for one, it'll shift it for the other, and then no delta. We needs the delta, yeah? So we're using a delta tonight of 30 frames. 30 frames equals 1 second, which means any measurement of space will be over the space of 1 second exactly, which means if we divide distance by time, the divisor is going to be 1, which means divide by 1, same number. Yay! One less operation because of choosing units carefully. Let me see. So I've got the frames all shifted over on this curve, the copied curve. I can now unselect them. Well, I can also do this to illustrate how Blender thinks about space. If I turn on all 3 of these other frames that I ain't using, pardon me, we quickly notice that they're at the same point in time where they were before. They didn't get shifted. So there's the first one's at frame 1, the next one's so far further. So there's none of this ghosting happening on these frames. I could get rid of all of them because it's for the ghost only. I get rid of just these unneeded keyframes. Just delete them. So now the only ones that will be shown or displayed or paid attention to are the ones which are the data I actually need. Not using rotation at all now. Merely the location's the main thing. So here's controller car ghost. And I don't necessarily need to see controller car ghost. I'd like to be able to select it, but not necessarily see it. Now, it is nice to see it, don't get me wrong, especially for this reason. It's nice for this reason. But what I don't think is that controller ghost needs to be exactly the same shape of or type of empty, so that it's clear that's a different type of object we're watching there. It's not the same controller. So if I go to empty, the empty, I had to put this empty properties. I can choose plane axes or sphere or cone. Sphere might be nice since it's going to be over the same space, but I could change some of these scalar dimensions since they don't have to be the same. So maybe 1.5 for that one too, and Z can be 1.5. So this is the ghost object. Definitely see it, and I'll worry about it later. I'll worry about making it invisible later, or making it smaller even, because it doesn't have to be very big to be seen and used. Maybe that's even better, because you know, now it kind of looks like it's measuring something useful. But we can see that this is where the delta is coming from, and it's over the space of a second. So if the car stops for a second, the delta will go all the way back to the center. If it doesn't stop for a second, there'll always be some delta. There'll always be some speed. So this controller got its rotation or curve data from that controller. And the difference between them is this controller's data has been advanced by 5 frames or by 30 frames forward in time, which means we're looking at data from the past a second later. That's the real way of looking at this. At frame 31, we're looking at the very first frame of information about where the car had been located. For the first 31 frames, it assumes 0 until it starts to move. And then it gets its speed from the fact that this is currently at the 0 position for 30 frames a lag. So it still gets speed the minute it starts moving from that 0 offset. So that takes care of the first thing. And that, friends, is where we're going to get our deltas from. So here's what we called cur x one time before. It doesn't matter what I call it underneath these controllers, but here now delta x, add driver, and manually create it. Go under drivers. You see delta x has now been selected and can be worked with. We'll move this up here and just scroll these down. Delta. This one needs to have the delta obvious. I don't know if it's obvious to you. It's obvious to me. Delta needs 2 variables. It needs the current variable and the previous variable. Current's already been set, so to speak. Like I could get it specifically by calling from self. So really I only need to track one more variable. It'll be a transform channel. This is going to be prev x, and I'll get it from the ghost controller. X location in space gives me what the value used to be 30 frames ago. And the scripted expression for delta x. Wait, now I do have to do this right. Add another variable. This one, single property. We're going to call this one cur x. We're going to get the property. Well, we use self for this one, but we're going to get the property from the odometer. Well, not the odometer, the speedometer itself. And then I'm going to hover over here because it's cur x. I'm going to pass this variable through directly. So I'll right-click this, copy data path, and then hover over here and paste it. And then we see how it considers that. We'll see how that considers the naming of this. For this data path under vmeter car, all I need to enter in here is brackets, square brackets, and locx. So if I want to do the next one, it'll be the same thing. All I need is this, and the way that this is in the namespace, I can manually enter this and get it pretty quickly. So it's passing one variable straight through. Delta means change in. So what I'm going to do to find the delta is to take current x and subtract previous x from it. And whatever that value is, it gets passed forward. Whatever that value is. Right now, negative 8.6. Hey, Jim, what happens if you put in previous x minus cur x? Turns to a positive. Does it matter? Well, as it turns out, it doesn't. I'll show you why it doesn't really matter. This delta, in the next step of calculation, I'm going to want to square it, which in script expression is asterisk asterisk 2 for raised to the power of some number. I could do that by 3, I could do it by 4, I could do it by whatever like whatever integer value you wish. You may raise the power by. But if you notice that the difference the first time was that the number was negative something and then positive something. The number was the same one way or the other. The absolute value remained the same. The sign switched. When we square it, the number is going to be the same no matter which way I put these. Cur x, prev x. Same number no matter what I do. Good answer. Delta y. So all I had to do here to get this was to track one more variable, which is the position in the past at this being measured from this current moment in time, which is current location. So there's a delta involved. I'll square it in advance and pass the square forward to vcalc. Delta y. Add driver, manually create. Select it just by left clicking it. Use self. Variable number 1 is going to come from the ghost. This is prev y. I want the ghost's y location. Now I'm going to add a variable. This one is a straight variable. This is going to be cur y. Select that, and following the naming scheme, square brackets, pos, loc y in quotation marks and square bracketed, gets the value, driver value, prev y or cur y, doesn't matter which way I do this, cur y minus prev y raised to the power of 2 gives me a value of 0.006. Now 4 of these are being driven entirely and all on the odometer object. This is this makes things so simple. Is worth mentioning it. Hey John, how you doing? Welcome back. Going through how to do this in Blender. For anyone who's interested in following along at home, you can take your time and learn how to use Blender like a graphing calculator. Like a proper graphing calculator. So here's the new script. Same as the old script. If I hover over it, I can actually see what those expressions are. And if I click here, I get the expression. I can change the expression by clicking here from here on. I don't have to be down here to do it. Here's 4 green or 4 purple. Where's the 5th one? vcalc, add driver, manually create, vcalc. Scripted expression. It could be minimum value, it could be a sum value. It's going to be also a scripted expression, but I need to add some variables to it. These could be single properties. We'll be using self. First one, dx. Second one, dy. And since this is going to be in the object, same object in both cases, the V meter car, I could just type that straight in here. It would pop up on the list too. And I know now that square brackets delta x will get me an answer, and square brackets delta y will get me another answer. So both these values are now being passed forward through this expression. I want the square root dx plus dy. Doesn't need any division. That would be the meters per second, whatever that square root is. So now vcalc equals meters per second. And on this object, the actual meters per second. So if I start scrolling through now, you'll see at animation speed, or whatever the full speed is, 30 frames a second or thereabouts. We'll start seeing what those values return as. And I happen to know from having done the math ahead of time, 5 meters a second is the same as 11 miles per hour. 10 meters a second is 22. That follows that pattern. Double it and it gets double again. There's 5 meters, so there's 22. See if he makes 10 this time. And we're measuring over the distance of a second, so there doesn't need to be any other math or division involved to get the speed. So how do we convert it? Well, friends, that's the fun part. This VCalc, currently square root dx plus dy, and these are squared, right? I really should name these that these are squared values. But you can see it in the script anyhow. That's where the squaring takes place, and it totally gets rid of the sign when that happens. Hey Jim, aren't you getting rid of the vector data? Well, no, because I'm still tracking rotational values. So the rotation keeps straight. The z rotation will actually keep straight where those vectors belong. If we're not quite sure why the delta x and delta y are coming back funny, or how come when squared what the square root of them is it plus or is it negative, or plus or minus? Of course, I got to do the same thing now for the helicopter to get this stuff to work to this level. But that's not what I came here to tell you about. I came here to talk about the draft. That's Alice's restaurant joke. Please bear with me. Don't need to see the curves for this next part. I'm going to go instead to a text editor. This text editor, see? This is this doubles as more than one thing, but it works for a bunch of different reasons. We're going to call this speedometer.py down here. I probably should save this and copy paste to something from. Well, I didn't take coding this out again is a bit of a pain. It ain't terrible, but it is a bit of a pain. Open recent. Go to concordance. I'm going to grab the script straight out of concordance, which I used, and modify it to fit in the new situation. So I'm going to move this one, yeah. It's so very small. It's so very little. There's nothing to it. Control A, Control C. If I now open recent speedometer, and Control V, yeah, here we go. I admit, I put that envelope under that pile of trash. Yeah, me too. It was there, what is it? All kind of cop equipment that hadn't been used in years. Man, I'm taking 27 color glossy pictures with circles and arrows and a paragraph on the back of each one explaining which each one was to be used as evidence against us. So the script I've just imported into the text editor here below. This is all that's required now to put this value, whatever this numerical value is, as a text string in this object. Strangely, there's no way for me to do this graphically with Blender. While this can't be done graphically, I've got to use something like this to make this work. However, it's an easy script and it's not a difficult script. It's got one import, two declarations of variables which can be passed forward or back. In this case, there's a scene object which is speedometer, and then there's another object, scene objects, speedometer challengers from the previous one. I need this to actually read vmeter.car with a capital C, and it is case sensitive. Define recalculate text scene. This is the definition of a small subroutine, or we could call it a function. Recalculate scene, or recalculate text with a scene in it means whenever we call this function, which is what is happening at the bottom of the script here, applers, frame change, pre-append, recalculate text. When this gets recalculated, it takes the scene data for the current context scene and applies this to objects vcalc, which is this. It wants to call vfloat object vcalc and then work with the float object. So vconvert vfloat times 0.001 is for kilometers per hour, divided by 1.61 for miles per hour conversion. If I don't want miles per hour, I come over here and put a hashtag in front of the divided by sign. And that'll leave it at km per hour. So let's leave it at km for a second. I'll save this. The string format, this is Python specific, but it's going to take the way that I've got this set up here, I want it to display this, whatever the actual value is once converted. I want it to be displayed as a full integer value with only one decimal point afterward. So round up to one decimal point regardless of how many decimal points there are in it. For example, vcalc right now, if it was passed straight through, I'd want the format to say only 12.2, even though it's going up towards 5. But when it reaches 5, it'll roll up 3. So this changes the floating point number of the of wherever the locations are, the deltas and stuff. Changes that float to a single decimal number, and then append, or then literally assign the object data body the v string of whatever this string is of that number. It stops thinking it as a number and only considers it as text in a text box. That's it. Super simple script. Couldn't believe how simple it is. Alt P to run it. Go to first frame. Speed's currently reading 0.0. Ah. For some reason, it doesn't want to update it. Look at that. Oh. Do you see what I did wrong? I see what I did wrong. It's currently in meters per second. So if I want it in kilometers per hour, I have to multiply it. vfloat has to be multiplied and then reduced this way. It needs to be multiplied by 3600. And then divided by 1000. Which I think is this. Alt P. Go to the first frame. Ah, the numerical value jumped forward there a little bit. But now we're starting to see numbers which look about right. Huh? 5 kilometers an hour. Let's see how fast this thing starts to clock already. So I don't need to see this script window anymore. I could put this right back over to graph editor or timeline, doesn't matter which. Once the script has been running, the script stays in memory and will continue to update once it's been loaded once. The function which I've defined is what's been loaded into memory, so now Blender's current instance will continue to use that function to append script or update the value for as long as Blender's running or until the script changes. If something breaks the script, then the value stops working. So here we go again. Here's meters per second. And you multiply it by 3.6 to get kilometers per hour. 15 should be around 50. I know that. Wow. Got up to 12.4 there. It didn't manage to get anywhere near where I wanted it. Yeah, I think that's working out right. I think that works a bit right. So again, this is currently in kilometers per hour. Hey, do I want to have miles per hour? Like I said, the script allows for it, but if I want to change over, I got to physically save the script. And remember to put the hashtag in there to make the rest of this statement a comment. So it tells me explicitly in the script here, if I want to get miles per hour conversion, then to divide by this to get it. I got to be sure about my numbers here, but I am pretty sure 3600 times 0.001 has to equal 3.6. So, save it, run it again, voila, changes over to miles per hour just like that. But Jim, can this do it for more than one object? Yes, actually it can. Because I could do this for any object V meter. Or any object which meets a certain criteria. Or I can declare more than one object as to be operated on in the script. I have a choice here. The real point is as many different text objects as exist. There needs to be physically linked inside some script like this. So if there's 4 different text counters updating for speeds for something on screen, there needs to be 4 instances of this kind of object call, this kind of declaration for each of them. So I wouldn't call them object, and then I'd call them something else entirely. I would probably want to rename this maybe even vmeter or something like it. Or VM1, VM2, VM3, VM4. That might be better. So in this case, let's try that. We'll go VM1, vmeter for the car. VM2, it's going to be exactly the same line here, except the vmeter changes to that other one. Copy V, and then vmeter for helicopter or whatever it was. I think it was actually just controller some object or whatever. Was it vmeter heli? It was too, it was heli. Of course, none of the rest of it has been done for vmeter heli yet. Could also do this smarter than one at a time, but since there's only 2 of them to be updated in a specific example, I'm not going to bother to do any more than one. Could also run more than one script, but then I would have more than one of these running, getting in each other's way. I'm wondering whether or not, or whether I could pass something forward here. Other than scene. Okay, vfloat1 is vmeter1, the vcalc. vfloat2 then would be vmeter2. And the vcalc, and exactly the same as I was doing in the graphic editor a minute ago. I can just type in this custom property as a bracket to the end of this object. No period or anything required like this. Just put it in straight and it works. vconvert1 is vfloat1. vconvert2 equals vfloat2 times 3.6 divided by 1.614 mph. I'm going to leave one of them in kilometers, the other one in miles, just because. vstring1, vconvert1, vstring 2 equals much the same as this, except it'll be convert2. vm1 data body equals vstring1. vm2 data body equals the string where the variable is vstring2. One small change to double the amount of work the script has to do, but since there's only 2 counters, this would take care of both of them. Now all I have to do is to add drivers and a lag curve for the helicopter, and that's job done. Really, really dreadfully simple. This part blows my mind. This is this easy, but what it has to do when it does it. And I know that since there's a 1 and a 2 here, I should be able to get all objects from the scene which have vmeter in them, put them in a list, and then do this routine once per object in the list. So just iterate through for every object in this, for every vmeter object, for I in vmeter, 1, 2, 3, however many, just do the same calculation, and each vmeter would have to have those 5 like those 5 controllers ready to be given a driver. Where is the helicopter? There is the helicopter. All right, I don't need the helicopter. I want its vmeter. Graph editor. Well, certainly. First things first. Let's go back to the beginning of the animation, so that this part's easy again, and go over once more how I managed to get the offset for the data. In fact, maybe I'll make a difference. Maybe I'll do this one slightly differently. I'll do this one like I did the ones last night, with a fractional second measurement, and see if there's not much of a difference in the way that it updates. Should I or should I not be getting a better measure at the half second or at the full second, since the lag time involved is what's being measured. The longer the period of time, or closer to a second, the less fractional error there will be. I'm not entirely sure. Let's see, we're at frame 1. So first I have to duplicate it, Shift D. So now I've got the duplicate in hand. I can right click, it'll go back to where the current one is. I can change its name, controller some object, but it's going to be the ghost controller. And I'm going to do exactly the same as I did with the last one. It's going to be a sphere, which doesn't have any weird scaling. Copy and V and V. So now there's this small sphere lagging behind the chopper. Maybe I should make this 0.5 so it's nice and visible. Now there's a sphere lagging behind the chopper, or will be. And the sphere here has a bunch of F curves, same as the rest. Let's ignore the ones we don't need first by selecting them all and deleting them. And now let's turn on the other ones that I do want to keep. Go to the first keyframe, which is at frame 1. 10, 20, 30 frames away. A twice to select all keyframes. I can scale down this way, but I want to scale in much closer this way. Holding middle mouse to scroll. 31, this one needs to go to 31. Hey, let's do it in 15 instead. 21, 16. Grab X, holding shift to get frame by frame motion. Here is on frame 16. These turn yellow. So here it is, the the ghost controller, the delta controller, back at its correct location in space. I can get rid of these curves again. I don't need to see them anymore. What I need is this object. Maybe I should put it off to the side here more. This is the real beauty of it. It doesn't matter how much it's offset. As long as it's always outside the radius of the turn, for the chopper. As long as here somewhere. The chopper can swing around and not obscure it, I'm happy. We're going to go to driver's mode. And we'll do the exact same as we did the last one. Add driver, manually create. Turn on the driver's panel again. Let's select this one explicitly. The controller object is this rectangular one. So I want drivers, not F curves. F curves is a regular curve graph, but the driver is what we've currently got selected. This one is going to be a variable. It's going to come from that sum object. It's going to be X location. We'll call that loc X. Or even, I think cur X is what I ended the last time. And so loc X is going to be the same as cur X. So as long as those two are the same for this object and that object, then I'm good. Here's the next one. Add driver. Manually create. Only want to see Y. So this is cur Y for the controller sum object. It's going to be Y location in world space. Cur Y. So now they're both passed over. Delta. Add driver. Manually create. Delta X. Needs two variables. Do you remember? First one is previous X, or prev X, which comes explicitly from some object's controller some object ghost, X location. But it also has, using itself, cur X, coming from V meter heli under the loc X value. So the scripted expression for this will be in either way, cur X minus prev X raised to the power of 2. Delta Y. First variable, cur Y. That's a single property. Comes from the actual V meter. Loc Y. And a variable, this one's a transform channel, prev Y. Comes from the ghost object. It's the Y location, not the X location. In brackets, cur Y minus prev Y squared. So the driver value gets passed through. So we can see this is mostly north-south motion. And if it was considered over the frame of a second, it would be, what would it be? It would be 12 meters a second. But if it's only a half second, then he's doing 24 meters a second. Here comes vcalc. Add driver. Manually create. Take vcalc. Scripted expression. Needs two variables. Delta x, delta y. These are single properties coming from self. V meter heli. I could copy that right now too and paste it the next time. So dx, add variable, dy, control V to paste V meter heli right in. This is square brackets delta x. This is square brackets delta y. And unlike the last time, we have to do this a little bit different. Square root of dx plus dy. And this time, divided by 0.5 since it's over 15 frames for meters per second. Ah, I was wrong about the speed. It's lower. Square root dx plus dy, right? Oh, these are squares. These are squares. Right. Right, square root of. Yeah, that makes more sense. And over 0.5, so it actually doubles the V. It doubles the V, right? Square root of 12 is close to 3.5, so doubled. So there's the vcalc for meters per second for the helicopter, using 15 frames a second as a lag on the controller defined by these curves. Same curves that the chopper got, they're merely lagged in space. Now the chopper's object is there ready to be talked to, but it's the V meter heli. Yeah, it should work. And hey, I might even want to make that a little bit bigger so that the V meters are almost always viewable. One last thing I need to do. Gee, I hope you can hear me. Have I been talking to myself all this time? No. Control S. So V meter car, V meter heli, they're both labeled here. They got the calculations. Going to run the script. V meter heli ain't updating. Have a V meter car. Did this screw it up? V meter car is working. Okay, I'm going to select this. Didn't matter last time, it was 555 that was in the first one. Now, why ain't V meter heli registering? Do you see my error? I see my error. There's the error. Convert without capital, so it didn't get the right, it didn't get past the right value because there was no V convert with a capital. Now there is. Or now it's working, I mean. Let's go back over to timeline. Timeline will be much more satisfying. So now the V meter for the heli. Boy, it's nice and all, but I think it should probably be a little bit bigger in scale. So let's manually get the font bigger. Make the font bigger. Scale. Make font size 2. Font size 5 maybe might be better. And if I turn off this, here's the next thing. Controller car ghost. I want to see it, but I don't want to select it. And it doesn't get rendered either. And then some objects ghost. I want to see it, but I don't want to be able to interact with it. The car, I don't want to be selectable. The object, controller, some object. Oh no, that one I want selectable. Some object I don't want selectable. Top blades I don't want selectable. V meter car, V meter heli. V meter car. I made the font size 5, wasn't it? Yep. And I grab it now and offset it anywhere at all from the car. I can put it behind the car. I can put it in front of the car. I don't even need to locate it with the car. I can put it on the camera display. So as the camera goes around, car speed this, heli speed that. Doesn't have to track at all. I've only done that for ease of animation. So this is in kilometers. This is in miles. It's from the same script. Either way, it works the same way. I'll select them both so as to keep them highlighted. I guess it makes more sense to put them both in the same scale, whatever they happen to be. This is so friggin' cool. I've never been able to get this working easily. Look at that. That's 100. That's up to 100 kilometers an hour, just like that. And it's being measured now at every 15 frames in distance to get this readout. Is it any more accurate than that other one? I have no idea. It would be interesting to see what happens here. I know if you go fast by frames, at 10 frames a second, they'll give you different readings depending on 5 or 10 or 15 is a gap, like a gap in the measurement. Let's see how it goes lower here. Let's just go back in time here. I also noticed last night it reports different speeds in reverse than it does in forward, which strikes me as wrong. That's 50 kilometers. And if a helicopter does that, yeah, it takes a few seconds to slow down too. So he's doing 100 there before he makes that turn. Right, right. This isn't about physics. This is about distance over time. That's all. Well, it is about physics. It isn't about real-world physics and gravity and G-force turns. But you can see how the delta V is being calculated now by the ghost object, which is tracking behind it in exactly the same path, but some known distance. So this is making 60 odd miles an hour that way. I'm interested now. If I do this in 10 frames, what does it make it? Does it make it faster? Or does it get the exact same answer? Because it should. And as I say, the chopper is measuring in a kilometers per hour, whereas the car is measuring... Oh, look at that. Whereas the car is measuring in miles per hour. So, that essentially concludes this tutorial. In the sense, or at least it gets to the scope of what I wanted to do with it, which is to give a really clear indication of how you might manage to get Blender to work reasonably well in doing some of the mathematics involved in, well, you can do all the mathematics depending on your precision. But if you don't need anything more precise than a meter, I don't see why you would. In fact, let's put this another way. Why shouldn't a Blender unit equal a foot or a yard? In fact, it could be a yard or a foot. There's actually a place in Blender's controls here. It's under the World panel. I'll turn off the preview and the world color and the ambient occlusion, environment lighting, indirect lighting, gather, mist. And then over here, scene values, units, unit presets, centimeters, feet, inches, kilometers, meters, miles, or millimeters. All pre-done. I want length to be imperial, metric, or none. I want angles in degrees or radians. So you can choose all that stuff right here. You can tell it what gravity is here as well. Or turn gravity off. I could turn volume off entirely. Update animation cache for the audio, stuff of that nature. If audio goes out of sync, update the cache. It'll be back in sync after. Speed, Doppler shift, whether or not it's in stereo, what the rate is, all controllable here. But gosh, it's a fun little. This is a fun little deal. This one. I go back to the script editor, the text editor. Show the script one more time. I'll make this bigger so that it's clearly visible on the stream. That's as simple a script as I could imagine. If we wanted to do this for only one object, you'd only need half these lines, since I wouldn't need this VM2 or float2 or convert2 or string2 or the second call to update a string. But for as many text bodies, as many of these body units that need to be updated, that have no other way of getting, you have no other way of actually accessing them. You need to have a call like this to update them specifically one at a time, and it needs to be in a script. So then it needs to be handled in this fashion by specifically calling bpython's app handler's frame change pre-append routine with the recalculate text subroutine or function which I've defined in the script. So frame change pre-append comes bundled with Blender. Recalculating text is a function we've added to it. And it's an idea which I got online and have adapted any number of times since. It's the reason why I've used it again. Should probably put a link to the specific place I found that online in the description for this as well. I need to take a short break. Doesn't need to be very long. Here comes some more Chris Osmond and Blue Mood. I'm looking forward to putting the camera on this stuff too.
told me twice about a third time around. I had to pay the price. And all that's been is my regret. And I can't forget the woman yet. And all that's been is my regret. But I can't forget. You want me, yeah. There was a tune called You Weren't Ready Yet. I'm gonna keep with the originals now for a little while. We've been on an original little spree lately. It's a little song called I Will.
Shaw. Still playing in the background here. I left it going. Can't read them from this distance, of course, but hey, you can see that they're updating. And once again, that is Chris Osmond's Blue Mood live distortion back in the spring. I happened to be also taking part in the gig that night. That was a fun little evening. Car in miles, helicopter in kilometers per hour. Yeah, I didn't drop something there behind. That's the indication of what its speed or what its location is. So you can also look at it this way. From the top down graph, the speed is directly being determined by the slope of this curve on the X and the Y combined to get that number. Same for this one. And if I was to convert this over to kilometers per hour right now, he's doing 100. Go back in time a little. Yeah, let's just put this in both to kilometers per hour. So save Alt-P to update the script. It switches to kilometers just like that. And since it's only one extra conversion, I could easily do 2 text updates from the same on the same object at the same moment in time. He's doing twice the speed of the car there. How fast did the car jackrabbit up to? 140? Oh man. Oh, he crawled up there. He got there. I might have managed to push a car that fast once or twice. Downhill. When ain't nobody watching. And then the speed goes to 0 as the animation ends because delta V is updating even though nothing else is. Neat, right? I think it's a very good proof of concept. Myself, I mean that's my own ideas talking, but I do believe that it's a pretty good proof of concept. And as I say, the only thing you need to know to make that work is this small block of text. So really I should be making notes here of things that I need to upload or things that I need to show and not tell about. One thing would be this here script. So provide links in description. 1 for the script, 2 for the blend, 3 for the tutorial online link that helped me get that way. Helped me figure this out. And I'll add those in sometime between now and the end of stream. But yeah, I think this should be visible enough to be able to, you could easily read this and you should have enough time to pause it and get it. Maybe the revised Iridian dates in the way there at the bottom. But it's just a single close brackets around recalculate text. Pretty simple stuff. I'll make it a little smaller there just to so it's all in screen. And here in the text window you can actually see text controls like run script is explicitly listed on the menu, context menu. The view, we got all kinds of little odds and ends, bottom of file, top of file. Edit and format, we can turn on white space to tabs or spaces. Comment, uncomment is automatically formatted. Editing, Text auto-completing, control spacebar. It's pretty nice. Text to 3D object. Ooh, that's nice too. Where's word wrap? Oh, right, Python. I can get a bunch of things in like automatically programmed here. That's from the templates menu. If I hit Control T, yeah, I get my properties menu. I can make this bigger too. Turn on line numbers, turn on word wrap. Syntax highlighting. Ooh, that's nice. Much nicer that way. Now I can see where my variables which are coming from things are. I can tell where things are being defined or declared. Oh, P, just make sure that it's running on the correct one, although I'm pretty sure it will be. If it hasn't updated majorly since the last time I touched it, so it should be fine. Really, I don't think there's anything else to do with this one other than show it off. I am kind of curious about what the numbers indicate about some of these trips, though, like distances versus time. So what I'm doing is getting a momentary velocity, not acceleration now, but velocity. The actual speed indication from any given instant by measuring the delta, which is to consider the acceleration. But getting the delta, or knowing that this is the derivative that I'm looking for, get that delta worked out and convert it into meters per second, and then to whatever actual speed or unit I want. So from Blender units to units per second to whatever the final unit's going to be. I really like this part. I like this sense of standoff, or well, fine, let's have a little race, even though there's no way I'm going to win it. The dude on the road is like totally outclassed. Chopper don't have to try to go fast. that looks so right. It's not even funny. He's like, holy shit, that dude just buzzed us. And I'm like, yeah, you know he did. And did in style. So I can see that the second is probably a little too long. Not for the chopper, yes, for the car. The car would do better with the half second than the chopper would. Because the car when it makes distance, well, it changes like here. I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to double check both in order to see which gives me the better indication. Consider this, like the car is almost stopped here. There's no way he's still doing 50. No way he's still doing 30. No way he's doing 20. So that might be a little too long. 30 frames might be a little too long. Let's get the script up again. Oh, it's under text, right? And where's N? I want to see both of my my V meters. Delta X is right. So VCalc right now is simply the square root, one to the other. So I'm going to change this to be like the other one, divided by 0.5. So I've added a bracket around one side. I have to add a bracket on the other to get the new value. And then see, I gotta get the cars. I gotta get the on the graph, on the F curves. I want the car controller ghost, which I've already disabled as a selectable thing. I want to be able to select the car controller ghost. Don't need to see any controllers other than just the keyframes. Go back to the start. Get to the first frame, which should be at 31. Go back 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the adjusted value. Grab X holding shift, sliding it back till that turns yellow, or these turn yellow. Unselecting them. Now both of them are at start position. This one and this one should now be updating on a half second without me having changed anything else on the script. Don't need to see this. And again, both of these are currently in kilometers per hour, not in miles. Curious to see how it handles the changes in speed now. The car in particular. The car more so than the chopper. Whichever is giving me the better response on the car is the one I'm going to be using in the future. Is it 5? Is it 10? Is it 15? Is it 30? I don't know. 30 is simple math, that's for darn sure. That strikes me as better. Right here. Next to the Golden Phoenix. Oh man, he would have screeched around that one at 20. Yeah, right. Board of this corner. Rolling over. Yeah, 15 looks to be a little more responsive than 1. Chopper's like, no you don't, neither. I know the chopper's going to get upwards of 180 there in this straightaway. 200. He's making 140 one way, 150 that way easily. So the second give him a lower overall speed during the high acceleration moments, but I think it's a little more responsive when he's slowing down or turning. Like it runs out quicker because it's only a half second. So that is, as they say, that. Guess that should pretty much end this first broadcasting session for this evening. I got some other things to do with what I've been doing in Blender with, other related issues. But I did want to do a proper all-in, like, show how this is done once through. And let's hope that there's more interest in the particular than the specific. So the particular, not for application-specific application, but the particular because it's a common question. Imagine it's been asked more than once. I've never seen a satisfactory answer for it, so I'm providing one. And as I say, check the description for this video for uploads and or links that will tell you a little more about how things are done in Blender. So, my name is jamespfp, this is the Banjocast, pitchforks, flaming torches, thank you for watching. Please comment or subscribe below. Leave a thumbs up if you like what you see, and I will talk to you later.